Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 7 of the Maritime Witch, where we will be discussing misconceptions about witchcraft and witches. Episode 7. So according to the podcast gods, this is where podcasts go to die, and a lot of people don't carry on past episode 7. Well, I'm excited to tell you that episode 8 is already written, so we will be making it past episode 7. Yay!
Cool.
Okay, so misconceptions about witchcraft and witches. Originally, this episode, for me was going to be about witchcraft in Nova Scotia. And when I started doing research, I kind of hit a stone wall because witchcraft, modern witchcraft, is not really prevalent in Nova Scotia. And I know that kind of sounds redundant considering I was looking at history. But when I started to dive into the history, which there really wasn't a lot of what kept popping up was stories about women who were accused of evil doing, and it was evil this and evil that and blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, okay, you know what? That's not where I want this podcast to go.
Blah, blah, blah.
I don't say blah, blah, blah.
I don't want to dive into the wrongdoings of everybody who practices witchcraft. So then I decided that, well, let's flip the tables and let's actually discuss these misconceptions that are out there, because witchcraft is poorly portrayed in most movies and TV shows. It was primarily women who were accused of practicing witchcraft. There were men as well, but primarily it was women. They were known as the devil's handmaidens. A lot of people who practice witchcraft, I can honestly tell you, do not worship the devil. Some of them may not even believe in the devil or in hell itself. So yeah, the link between Satanism and witchcraft is primarily through other religions feeling threatened by people who practice Wicca and witchcraft, paganism, and again, not portrayed very well in TV and movies as well. Hollywood has kind of really taken it down an evil path, and because that is our entertainment, you know, movies and television, a lot of people think that what they see that's how it is, and that just is not how it is. The other thing is that witches perform sacrifices. You know, we eat babies and we sacrifice animals. I can quite honestly tell you the only thing that we sacrifice is our time. It is a lot of dedication to the practice and the craft. And yeah, so it definitely is just our time that is sacrificed. In medieval England, wearing makeup was actually associated with Satan. Lipstick, if you wore lipstick, I mean, that was a big no-no. You were the devil. Again, the devil's handmaiden. I know we have a story here in Chester, Nova Scotia. There is, in the old Baptist graveyard, there's a gravestone, and there was a woman who was buried way down the hill, down the back. And the story was that she was a witch. And I can't even remember. I don't even think her name, I don't know, I might be wrong here. It might not even be on it. You can't even read it now. It's so old. When in fact, she was not a witch. She just really liked other women's husbands.
Yeah, that was one of the first places that you took me to. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
you stuck around.
I pretty well knew what I was in for after that.
Yeah, it's like, oh, great. She took me to a graveyard.
Yeah, but back then you could actually still read the tombstone.
You could a little bit. It was really starting to fade, and it's been so long since I've been there that I have no idea what shape it's in now.
But I remember it was none too nice.
Yeah.
What was on that tombstone?
Yeah. Her epitaph that was actually carved. They actually carved it basically like right in the house. She was, I hate to say, like the town whore. You know? Like,
yeah.
Like it was written like right there on her gravestone.
Yeah, that's yeah.
Yeah.
The boys. Yes, the boys.
Move from here and you'll never see that boy again.
Another misconception about witchcraft is that witches were burned at the stake. In North America, they actually weren't. They were burned. I'm not saying that they weren't, because they were. They were burned at the stake in Europe. But in North America, primarily the Salem witch trials, witchcraft was a felony and it was punishable by death, and the death penalty was by hanging. So a lot of the witches were hung. There were actually, no one was burned at the stake, other than there was one person who was pressed to death by stone, which was horrible. That's all horrible. I mean, and that's the other thing. The huge misconception of witchcraft is the witch trials, because a lot of these people who were tried and convicted of witchcraft were not practicing pagans or anybody who practiced witchcraft at all. They were, women, primarily women, again, who were healers and had knowledge and were starting to gain power. And in a predominantly male-run world, that needed to be squashed. So.
Yeah, it was like a land thing too, wasn't it?
Yeah. Usually, I've heard, I've done some research, and it was usually times were a lot harder, so people didn't live as long. They worked hard. The weather was hard on them. And if a husband would die early and then the widow was left with land was seen as power. And so they would do their best to make sure that, she didn't get to keep that land. So, oh, look, she's a witch. Yeah, it's a very sad time in our history. And like I said, and then creators of movies and television have kind of run with the evil aspect of witchcraft.
Witch. That's Satan's power.
It has nothing to do with Satan, Mama. It's me.
I'm not saying that there aren't people out there who don't practice black magic, as we have discussed, that they do practice with the intent to harm others. But I think for your modern day witch, we're celebrating life, we're celebrating nature, celebrating family and friends, and our intentions when we're doing spell work are for health and prosperity and love and peace. And, there's nothing evil in that at all. Another misconception is, witches wear black. Well, I do, because I actually just like to wear black. It has nothing to do with my pathway at all. I do splash a little bit of color in there once in a while, but to be honest, I don't feel comfortable unless I have something on that's black. All witches have black cats. No, they don't. They've got black cats, white cats, calico cats, gray cats, biscuit cats. They've got dogs, they've got lizards, they've got tarantulas, they've got snakes. It's not just your typical black cat.
Some even got little chipmunks.
Yeah. We have a whole yard full of tiny little familiars. So chipmunks and squirrels and birds and our groundhog Edith.
So the whole thing with the whole witches making a potion, is that kind of based on years of them making stuff like, ointments to actually clear up a rash or?
Yeah, I mean, spell work and potions, it's just, again, made with intention. The old mustard plasts, those are what, a lot of it was just old healing potions. It's where a lot of medicine has come from. I mean, obviously working with plants and botanicals and things that you find in nature. So yeah, salves and tinctures and all that stuff. It's
So I guess if you're capable of making making some kind of a, salve or whatever to heal something, that would be seen as power, like back then.
Well, because if you had the power to heal, it gave you strength and wisdom and power, so you were...
So if you got thousands of years of developing all these different things to heal things. It makes no sense to come along and just squash all that out. There's probably like a lot of that's lost in time.
Well, and I think a lot of the old, I guess they would have been called recipes. And one thing that I didn't know until actually quite recently, just because I was watching some antique videos and what have you, is that when you're antique hunting, you should look for a receipt book, like an antique receipt book. Because the receipt they were recipes that were written out, and the receipt was kind of given to the intended. Mm-hmm. So, if you were writing out a potion for chicken pox or, you know what I mean? Just something for like a rash or a cold or that sort of thing. They were actually found within these old receipt books. I haven't been lucky enough to find one of these in an antique store yet, but I'm not really sure. They're probably insanely rare to find. Like usually something like that is something that you've got within your family that's been passed down recipes. Chicken noodle soup. I mean, come on. Like that's one of the best potions in the world, is it not?
Been busy? Have good hot Campbell's chicken with rice soup, cause
Good things begin to happen whenever you have good hot soup.
Have you had your soup today?
It's just sad that a lot of that's lost because, I mean, that's like thousands of years of, knowledge. That's gone just because it threatened, not picking on any religion.
Well,
but
somebody felt threatened.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's not picking on any religion, but it's actual history and it's ignorance to think otherwise.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like I said, not picking on any religion, but
but other religions just felt that paganism and witchcraft was just a threat. And it's funny because even doing my research for this episode, there is still, and this is a huge misconception, is that there is a belief that witchcraft will actually be on the decline with the process of development, with societies becoming improved with healthcare and security and education. And I mean, I'm sorry, but that's a huge lack of education to think that, I mean, if anything, people coming out as witches and practicing, coming to seek the pathway of witchcraft and Wicca is on the rise. It is not on, sorry to disappoint, but it is not on the decline. It is very, very, it's becoming very widely accepted, and I'm meeting, going to the fairs and stuff that I do, I'm meeting more and more people who are becoming interested in following this pathway, or at least learning about it to see if that's where they want to go. Yeah.
The thing that surprised me the most is when we went to Salem, I was expecting it to be like all playing up to the Hollywood, witches are evil and all this and everything. They actually educate you.
Yes, they do.
They educate you on the, where everything comes from and how ignorance caused a lot of what happened.
There are a lot of great museums and things to see in Salem. And if you do get a chance to go, the presentation at the Salem Witch Museum is outstanding. It really is. I can't remember what the admission fee was, or it's really irrelevant because if you're there, you're going to go anyways, probably. But it was quite a lengthy presentation. Definitely well worth your money and so well done. And for someone like me who, that was a dream trip for me, was to go to Salem. Again, not because I believe that these women who died were, practitioners of witchcraft, but because I am a practitioner of witchcraft. They died. We have to honor those people. They died for a cause that they didn't really have a part in,
Actually, they were murdered.
Well, yeah.
Really. I mean, everything aside, you can accuse anybody of anything, but when you accuse somebody of something...
Well, these were innocent women and children. Some of them died in prison. Some of them were prisoned for years, even afterwards.
They were murdered out of ignorance.
Yeah, it's very sad. And then there was another museum that we went to. The presentation was very well done. I mean, all of the presentations that we went to, all of the museums were outstanding. But there was one, and I know we went down, the name escapes me as to which museum it was, but we went down into kind of like the basement of the building, and they had things set up in there. And a lot of the pictorials in that museum really, really hit home as to how tragic of a time this was in our history. If you are sensitive, just be warned. It's like I said, it's a little eye-opening, and it actually is the Witch Dungeon Museum. I looked it up.
Didn't they used to, I know this is going to sound really cruel, but I mean, it's education and people should know, because it really opened my eyes too. They hung dogs and everything too, didn't they?
Yep. Yeah, they also killed the dogs and cats of anybody who, because they were seen as familiars and they were animals of the devil. It's just, for somebody like me, I mean, I love animals. I love all animals. And, to think that, somebody's little kitty was, murdered, or their dog was murdered because they were accused of something that they didn't even do. And really, I mean, when you think about what witchcraft really is, even if they were practitioners of witchcraft, they weren't doing anything wrong anyways.
No. But 9 times out of 10, they were just like healers of the community. Well,
they, like I said, they were women who were healers. And another thing that is a misconception too is that midwives were accused of witchcraft. And actually, the midwives most oftentimes were used to identify witches' marks on the bodies of other women who were accused of witchcraft. And as you and I had in a discussion earlier, it's sad that another woman has to then judge and basically condemn another woman to death because she has a birthmark, or she has a scar, or she's got a wart or whatever. But at the same time, by not conforming, she would have been in the exact same place as that other woman. She probably would have been tried and convicted of witchcraft and, again, punishable by death.
So if there were women and men that were accused of being witches, they were accused of doing something evil that they didn't do, and they were murdered for it. These other people were doing something evil by murdering people and murdering pets and stuff. My question is, who's the evil one?
I mean, it was a terrible time in history, but these people who were, in power and in charge and doing this, I mean, really didn't think they were doing anything wrong. And I think that in itself is very sad.
So do you think they thought to themselves, I deserve to have your land because you're a strong person, and to me that's evil?
Yeah, I hate to use the term brainwashing, because your belief system is your belief system. I don't think, I know that there are some cults out there that are definitely, brainwashed. But I just think that to be threatened by, and that's what it just really boiled down to, is that they just felt threatened by the power of somebody else, when really and truly what we all need to do, no matter what your religion, is just be happy for each other and just coexist.
It's pathetic to think that, women couldn't even vote until the 1960s.
Well, I'm not going to get into the political spiral of some of the things that are still continuing to go on in the world today. But equality there's a lot of things in this world that just need to be fixed. There really is. And sometimes when you see stories that come up in the news and come up in politics, you just kind of, shake your head and think, wow, we really haven't come that far out of the dark ages. And thank God they don't try people for witchcraft anymore, because sometimes I think that we're really not much past that. And yourself, back in November, we came up against a lot of controversy ourselves when I tried to do a witch-based fair. Don't get me wrong, it was received very well. It was supported very well, and supported very much by a lot of other religions. But there were a few people out there who tried to stop the fair. I received a lot of hate mail. I put up with a lot of bashing. There were some nasty rumors going around about what the event really was.
All ignorance. And
it was a lack of education. And I mean, I invited those people who tried to stop it to actually come to the fair. And, it did go through in the end. But yeah, there's like just a real lack of education. I know I have come across controversy personally where I have had one person in my life that told me I should just go back where I came from and that I had no right to be here. And then I had somebody else. I wear my jewelry. I wear the same jewelry every day. It's just a part of me now. And, you know, I actually had somebody come up to me and say, "Oh, I didn't know you were Jewish." And I'm like, "No, I'm not. But how am I going to explain this to you?" And then when I did explain it to them, then their reaction was like, "Oh my God, are you going to put a spell on me?" I'm like, no, just really don't have the time or energy for that. But there's just so much misconception out there. There really is. And, you know, if anybody wants to ask questions or wants to visit the Zen Den or, you know, ask me.
And to those out there that wanted to stop the fair and everything, they actually did you a favor.
Oh, they did. Yeah. Because by creating the controversy that they did, they just made people curious. And it was very well attended. And my vendors did very well. I did very well.
You were interviewed on the radio.
I was interviewed for a radio interview. Yeah.
And it was all because of this one person kicking up a stink. It's all ignorance, but they're not smart enough.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. They're not smart enough to realize they actually did you a favor. They did the opposite of what they were trying to do.
Yeah. And just so you know, there's another one coming up this year. So, you know.
Yep.
But yeah, like I said, it's sad that when people don't understand something, just ask questions. You know, if there's somebody who is practicing a religion, or if you don't understand it, do some research or just ask that person. Or, you know, like I said, we just really and truly, like if you find that this world right now, the world that we're in and the times that we're in, it can be some very dark days if you listen to the news and you see what's going on in the world. And if you have faith in anything and you have spirituality and you can find inner peace, then really at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how you're doing it or who you're doing it with. But if you can find happiness, that is all that matters. And we should all be able to coexist in the fact that we are all happy and happy for each other.
Amen, brother.
Sister.
Sister. Yeah, as we can tell, I'm a little confused on this podcast.
You know, and going back to the other thing I want to just reiterate too is that the sacrifices. I mean, I know that a lot of portrayals of witches are, you know, sacrificing goats and pigs and cats and dogs. And I can tell you quite honestly that the only thing that we've sacrificed is time and money. And right now, the wildlife habitat outside, we probably spend more on their food than we do on our own groceries. Like there's no sacrificing of any kind of animals. You know, we love our pets. We absolutely adore them. And, you know, anyways, a heavy discussion for episode 7, but I think a much needed one just because there are so many misconceptions out there. And hey, if you've heard of a misconception or whatever, then drop me a question on the Facebook page or at, you know, maritimewitch@gmail.com and say, "Hey, I heard this. Is this true or is this not true?" And you know, we'll answer your questions.
I got one.
Okay.
When you cast a spell, it's not like what people think, you know, like Hollywood, you know, oh, I'm going to make somebody disappear or something like that. It's a little more different than that, I assume.
Oh, spell work is very ritualistic. It's very labor intensive. And again, a lot of spell work that is done in witchcraft is for the health of yourself or a loved one. It might be to aid in the facility of finding a new job. It's really all done with good intentions. I know I actually had someone come to me. They had a loved one who was terminally ill. I mean, it wasn't like, oh, I was going to do a spell and I was going to save them. But the intent of the spell was to make their final days more bearable with ease and that their passing was with ease. So it was done with the intent of purity and peace.
So like prayer.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Because if you go to somebody that's religious and they're going to pray for you,
Yeah.
which is awesome because I believe in prayer too.
Well, and I mean, a lot of churches, if there is someone within their congregation that is ill, they will have like a group prayer for them.
Yeah,
So that's their form of spell work.
it's their way.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then if you don't believe in prayer at all, that's fine too. I mean, everybody's, each their own person. But that's what that kind of reminded me of when you said it would just be your way of doing it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
So anyways, yes, very heavy discussion. So having said all of that, in episode 6, we did the Wheel of the Year, and I did say that as we would progress through the year and do podcasts that we would go into a little bit more detail of the festivals. And so coming up on August 1st is Lughnasadh, also known as Lammas. It is a fire festival. It is the halfway point between the summer solstice and the fall equinox. It is a celebration of harvest and grain. The day honors the Celtic god Lugh. Modern day pagans celebrate with bread making. I don't, because I suck at making bread. And we actually don't eat a lot of bread anyway. So my lack of talent is not going to be missed. You can decorate your altar with symbols of the season. Scythes used to cut the grain is a very popular symbol. Corn and grapes and apples. You give thanks for the beginning of the harvest. It is a festival marked by singing, not by me. And the last sheaf of corn is made into a harvest doll and drenched with water as a rain charm. Now, being in Nova Scotia, I don't think anybody wants to be doing a rain dance or rain charms or anything. We've had quite a lot of rain lately, so I think we're all ready for a little bit of sunshine.
Yeah, they don't want to do it at this moment. No.
No. Foods, bread, blueberry pie, corn on the cob. The magic that is surrounding this festival is to invoke protection, prosperity, abundance, love, family, and nature. And colors that are used for decorating are bronze, green, gold, orange, and yellow. So we're getting kind of into the fallish colors of the seasons. So that is a little more in-depth look at Lughnasadh, and happy celebration to all of you. And now we will move on to the botanical section of the podcast.
And the time has come for plants to take back the world so rightfully ours.
So today's botanical I have chosen is white sage. White sage is represented by the element air and the planet Jupiter. Sage is widely used. It's used for smudging and keeping away negative energies. And it's also used in cleansing sacred spaces. It's used for peace and purification. So I know some people use it to cleanse their crystals and gemstones. And if they're doing any kind of spell work or even potions to cleanse the jars with sage as well. So very widely used. And so ends the botanical section of the podcast. And now we will move on to the gemstone section of the podcast.
I want to rock.
So today's gemstone is black tourmaline. It is a silicate crystal. This is a very strong healing stone. It is widely used in grounding and protection. And one thing that is really interesting about the black tourmaline is when it is heated, one end is a negative charge and the other end is a positive charge. So I haven't tried that, but I might. So ends the gemstone section of the podcast. And now we will move on to the shout out section. Yay!
Arriba.
And here we are at the shout out section. I would just like to let everybody know that The spiritual fair that we had previously advertised for July 22nd was canceled due to the weather and ongoing situation in the province. The shout outs today obviously go to emergency services, who I know are out there doing their very best to get power to everybody, to keep everybody safe. And our thoughts and prayers are definitely with the families who are missing loved ones at this time. So thank you for joining us for this very heavy discussion. In 2 weeks' time, we will be a little bit on the lighter side, and we will be discussing different types of divination. And in the meantime, may the universe find you safe, happy, and healthy. Blessed be.